So this evening's game is OST Volume 2, which is the Western Front game, and I am playing scenario number 11, Heavy Hitters, March 21st, 1945, in the Ruhr in Germany, and we have the Volksgrenadiers against the 9th Armoured Division from the Americans. In the camera we've got here, we've actually got a bit of sunlight coming through the window. That's probably going to move over the course of the evening. What we've got here are three stacks. Each stack's pretty much the same. They've got a leader, a lieutenant, and a sergeant and a captain there. And then we have a rifle squad, second line squad. Each of those stacks has got an LMG and a Panzerfaust. And the scenarios we're fighting over these four key objectives here. In addition, I've just actually played the first turn. It's a 9-turn scenario. There are a few special rules, but it's a 9-turn scenario. And in the first turn on the Volksgrenadier side, they've moved up a Jagdpanther. It's come off board on this sort of side of the map, off board, and has moved its way up. This is going to cause the Americans some mischief, no doubt. A couple of turns later, the Germans also get a couple of Panthers as well. So we better have a look to see what the Americans have got to contend with that. And then further east of the board, and you can just about see those two of those objectives just there. So further along the board here, we've got the American forces. And like I said, I've just played the first turn just to start to get to move the forces into position. The Americans have got numerous squads, a lot more infantry. Some of the infantry armed with bazookas and some with BAR. They're going to need those bazookas against some of those tasty German AFVs later. They've also got, though, a couple of Hellcats that I've moved into position. And on one of the rules on this scenario is that the fields here, and there are different fields throughout the map, they're muddy and boggy. So if you roll your armour into there, you're going to have to make bog rolls. I didn't fancy doing that. I didn't think the Americans would do that. So they've instead navigated around the fields. Time will tell if that was smart or not. We've also got some American half tracks that are moving speedily across the board with infantry. Now they can only hold one squad each. So we're going to try and get some of these squads into position to get close to those objectives, while the rest of the infantry are going to foot slog it across. The Americans have also got it's an M16 Half Track. So this is basically a half track that has an almighty quad 50 cal setup on the back. These were used. They were designed to be anti-aircraft, but in fact, the nickname is the meat grinder, I'm going to say. They were particularly effective, and with 4 50 cal weapons, you can imagine why, against infantry, and were used against infantry in the war. So they have one of those. Interesting to see how that gets on. I don't think I've ever played many tactical games with one of those, so it's quite unique. Later in the game, in the next turn, they also, which I'll be bringing on shortly, they have a couple more M36 Jacksons, which is one of the Hellcat and the Jackson is one of my favourite anti-tank fighting vehicles from World War II. I've drawn those both extensively now. I love them. So they will come on from this side of the board here, and a turn later than that, which is the same turn as the Germans are going to bring on their Panthers, the Americans get I think it's an airstrike off board. Yes, an artillery strike. So we'll see how we get on with that later. So yeah, we've got, what I like about this scenario, and I've played it a few times now, is we've got some cool American tank destroyers with the Jacksons and the Hellcats, that quad half track, and then the Germans, of course, have got the Jagdpanther and a couple of Panthers. But really, well, we'll see how we get on. Be interesting to see how it gets on compared to how I've played it in the past. So just finished the second turn, which is turn 8, and goodness me, the Jagdpanzer, the Germans got initiative, aggressively rolled the Jagdpanzer into position, and it walloped one of the Hellcats. And that gun, that 88 pack, that's a tough weapon. And even at the range, the die roll needed, I think, was a 6 or a 7, easily done. And it's got its AP firepower is a massive 15 compared to the front defense of 3 for the Hellcat. The Hellcats were not very well armoured. They were sort of what I call a shoot and scoot type of fighting vehicle, really, and it just walloped that straight there. So that is now a burning wreck. Conversely, though, in moving and then firing, the Jagdpanzer was done, and the other Hellcat took advantage of that, scooted round the side of this field, and put a round into the Jagdpanzer, and was able to immobilise it. So its gun still works, but it cannot move. Now, you do not want to be in a this type of tank destroyer where you can't move, because it doesn't have a turret, so it's a fixed gun. So the Americans immobilised that Jagdpanzer. The Americans were also able to move some of the infantry up, start to get them into position. Now, I made a decision as the American leader, Captain General of this assault, if you will, to hold this squad back because of the rules around the sort of cover and the degrade rules. This enemy squad here, which have an MG42 nest, wouldn't be able to fire through all that cover and hit them into that building because of the stone wall and then 2 sets of orchard. So at least that's how I remember the rule to be. So they've held back, and they're going to wait for some of these squads to move up to be able to give them enough fire to move into position to try and take out all these Germans here in this building. As a German, I decided that all these American troops coming towards me, tanks and half tracks, would actually better move up this squad that was in this building just off the map there. They started to move up to be able to offer some more defence to this control point. They're making their way into these woods. Because of that, you can't see, but there's another squad that I've moved into a slightly better position to give defensive fire for the last 2 objectives, which are just off the camera. So yeah, quite an interesting first turn straight into the action with this game. It's one of the things I like about OST. Already, and the other thing I think the thing that was quite interesting was this is tank on tank combat. This is pretty much how it was. If you hit the enemy and the round penetrates the tank's pretty much done. There's no chipping away at damage or anything. That was a good sort of narrative moment, and I imagine the Jagdpanzer coming into position, getting eyes on that Hellcat as that was getting into position, just firing first. In my mind, it's all happening at the same time, rather than in terms of turns, obviously. So yeah, good stuff. So we've just done turn number 7. The Americans were able to inflict a casualty on this stack here, who were guarding the woods and guarding that control point. They both had sort of return fire between them. Both stacks took a shaken, or they were able to use morale and shake that off. So they were actually, I want to remove those, just left them on there to remind myself. Not too much happening here, just sort of jockeying into position, but we were able to move the M16 through this orchard and aim it squarely with its quad 50 cals at the Germans occupying that building. On seeing that move towards them, they've run away. Don't blame them. Just moving out of line of sight. And the Americans have brought up their Jacksons. So we've got 3 Jackson just coming onto the board from this edge, and on this edge you can't see it, it's just off camera. We have 2 Panthers rolling up this road, ready to get into the action. This, luckily for the Americans, they rolled the initiative, and the first thing they did, just off camera at the top here, is that Hellcat that was firmly in the sights of the Jagdpanzer, but it managed to scoot out of the way before the Jagdpanzer, even though it's immobilised, its gun isn't, before it could take it out. If it had hit it, it would definitely, definitely take it out, almost certainly. So the Americans were able to move that, luckily. What this immobilised Jagdpanther's done is create this sort of channel where the Americans are going to have to keep their armour very carefully out of the way. In fact, I can see actually if the Germans get initiative, they could probably take a shot at that leading Jackson just there. He's just sat, I think, I'll double check, but could well be in line of sight because this is not bocage, this is a normal hedgerow. So yes, let's see how we get on next turn. So I just finished turn number 6, a really eventful turn. The Jagdpanther, was able to knock out one of the Jacksons over there, but another Jackson scooted around the side and fired across the hexes there, and was able to, luckily, just through the look of the dice, knock out by inflicting another damage roll. When you have 2 damage rolls on a tank in this game, you knock them out on the Jagdpanther. So that is now out of the game. This has opened up quite a lot for the Americans, but there was a fierce as a fight between this Panther that rolled in and the Hellcat, and the Hellcat is just off the camera, but got knocked out by the Panther. So there's another Hellcat's been knocked out of the game. Here, this untidy stack here, this German stack were able to inflict casualty on this stack of Americans here in the woods, eliminating one of the units. So that's going to get removed. Catch it there just to remind myself. And they didn't kill the leader that was in there, so he retreated into the building. That then left the Germans in this wood, and the Americans called in a strike, the artillery strike that they're able to do. And the artillery strike's more devastating on units in woods. I didn't want to call it in earlier because it was too close to the Americans, but now it wasn't because they'd taken them out. And that destroyed the whole lot in one go. So this really has opened up this area for the Americans now. The Jagdpanther's gone. They've got nothing to defend this control point. We've got troops very close, but we do have this Panther sat here. Now at the bottom of the map here, this other Panther rolled in. Seeing that Panther, the half track with that quad 50 cal backed out rapidly. There's no way that half track was going to stand any chance against the Panther. So that's opened up the bottom here for the Germans, as the unit, the infantry, were able to go back and push back into that area. They did take some fire from an American unit here, resulting in a casualty and them being shaken. But the Germans are in a much stronger position now at the bottom of the map, but maybe a little bit weaker at the top of the map. But though, like I said, they have these Panthers here, and they're going to be tricky to remove. They're going to be difficult and stubborn to get rid of for the Americans. So yeah, we'll see. So we've just had what I think is a very decisive turn. The Germans, on seeing the Americans sort of moving aggressively down here, brought up a Panther to reinforce these squads here, and that Panther was knocked out from one of the Jacksons. The gun on the Jackson, well, the armour isn't the gun. It's quite a punch, and even just with the dice roll hitting it on the front, knocked it out. This has effectively meant that the Germans then started to pull back. So they've moved the infantry squads into a defensive position to be able to cover these last 2 objectives, and they've moved the remaining Panther again to hold these 2. Now there are still some German infantry here that are taking a lot of fire. They've been shaken and then broken from fire. They were able to eliminate one of the squads very at the bottom of the map board just there. So I think how that turn has ended is that this part of the map is open for the Americans. Americans can move now unimpinged. The only thing they have to watch is this Panther here. As it's still got line of sight, even with because it's flying over hedges. Even with that, it's still got some covering fire here. But broadly, they can move unimpinged up into this position. Down at the bottom here, we've got a little bit of fighting still going on, but it's just a case of mopping this up, I think. Now, what's going to be interesting is we've got, from a tank point of view, the American forces have got 2 Jacksons left, and the Germans have got 1 Panther. So it's still to play for. We'll see how we get on. So the Americans have pushed their luck, and it didn't work. They rolled a Jackson in, and the Panther, in laying in wait, knocked it out as soon as it came into view. It effectively means now that the Americans have only got 1 Jackson left against 1 Panther. However, the Americans were able to dislodge the infantry down here. So they have now effectively taken these 2 control objectives, we will say. I mean, you have to move into the hexes, but and what we're left with are a handful of American units. Also, I forgot to mention, the Germans, though, in being dislodged, took one of the last units down here with them. So what we have is a number of American units and a number of German units and 1 piece of armour each. So it's kind of even Stevens for these last 2 objectives that the Americans really need to take, as they've been ordered to do so. So we'll, yeah. I thought the last turn I thought it was going in favour of the Americans. No, I'm not so sure. Certainly not for these last 2 objectives. So I've just played what I will call the final turn of the game. There's actually, in theory, there's a couple more turns left, but I think we're going to call the game just now. And the reason for that is the Americans rolled the last Jackson into the woods, and the Panther knocked it out. Walloped straight into the woods. Just got a very good dice roll. And with that gun, not even. I mean, the Jackson armour was good, but not anywhere near good enough. So, knocked it clean out. In addition, the German units here were able to defend against some American units that had come around. Actually, just done 2 rounds in a row, just quickly. And they were able to hold that and push them back. So, the Germans have held on to those last 2 control points. In terms of victory points, I will say it's a victory for the Germans. They knocked out a lot of armour. They inflicted a lot more casualties on squads than the Americans did on the Germans. I honestly thought it was going to go the other way. I thought the Americans had it. I thought with all those doors open, they would be able to grab those last 2 control points. It just goes to show those Panther tanks, they hang tough. They've got good armour, a lethal gun. You really need to get round to the side or the back of them to be able to stand really much chance. There were a couple of times where the shells just glanced off them. So yeah, overall a good, fun, tense, lots of narrative going on. Too many things to remember, really. I mean, tanks shooting each other, knocking out the Jagd Panther's mobility, a key point. Great firefights between squads, great firefights between the tanks. I felt it could have gone either way, to be honest with you. I think that maybe at playing the American side, I definitely felt, looking back, pushed a little too aggressive. Just a bit too confident in those tank destroyers. And playing the German side, I would say maybe could have been a little bit better in the defence at the beginning. Maybe a lot of it was down to the die roll. Both sides had very good at times and very poor at times impulse die roll as well. The Americans were rolling a lot more dice on the impulse points than the Germans were. And the Germans definitely suffered once or twice, was rolling very low on those impulse points. Good fun, tense, close, very rich experience. Another great scenario for within this game. Really, really enjoyed that. It was a great game. A lot of fun. And thanks so much for watching as ever.